Rach. Okay, so I get that we now have 10 times more media options than there are hours in the day, which I guess reflects how consumers are spending their time right now, as we all are. But everyone seems to have an opinion on the right mix to drive effectiveness. Can you help us get to the bottom of this?
Well, there's only one way to find out. Welcome to Rethink, a podcast by Think with Google. I'm your host, Rachel Corbett, and welcome to our final episode of this season. We have been through so much together, and we've learned a lot about what we've been up to since social distancing became a part of our lives. We've looked at how to grab people's attention when they're knee-deep in ukulele lessons at 3 p.m. I'm still not over that one. We've highlighted how diverse, creative and workplaces aren't just best practice, they're also smart business. And we've worked out that people will actually watch your ads if they're not crappy, so don't make them crappy. But today, we're focused on the mix and how to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck. To discuss this, we're bringing back Google's Head of Consumer Insights, Rachel Powell, who's got some thoughts on how the media mix is changing.
The media landscape is becoming increasingly fragmented. And if you think about video, for example, back in 2010, it wasn't at all uncommon to go down to the video shop on a Saturday night, take out an overnight rental, rock back in 3 days later and pay your $30 late fee. But we're in a very different place today. I mean, a lot of Aussies, they're relying on things like online video, streaming video on demand. We're seeing lots of shifts and changes in how people are consuming content. Now, some of these trends are more transient. I mean, out of home will come back once we're actually able to get out of the home again. But things like the shift towards online video and streaming video on demand is something that is going to be much more enduring and we expect to see longer term.
So you really need to think about diversifying your output. No more planning channels as separate silos, TV over here, paid search over here, because newsflash, that ain't how people consume content anymore.
So Game of Thrones, hugely popular TV show. I think there was 17.4 million people that watched it for the premiere of season 8. And that same month, we saw more than 1.2 billion views of Game of Thrones content on YouTube. Now, the show's not on there. It was more things like cast interviews or reaction videos, but it was our audiences really looking for kind of deeper and broader ways to engage with the content they saw on television. And if you think about it that way, you start to think, well, how can I plan video more holistically rather in silos? And in turn, that impacts your ROI. So we're seeing things like an increase in, on average, 35% in your ROI when you start to plan for TV plus online video.
And online video has become even more important after this bin fire of a year, because hiding at home trying to avoid a virus has meant people need something to watch.
72% of Aussies now have access to one or more SVOD services. That's 2.6 million more than the number of Aussies streaming prior to COVID.
The power of not being able to go to a restaurant. But not everyone has had a year like the streaming services, and it's natural to want to tighten the purse strings when times are tough. But if you've been with me since the beginning of this podcast, then you will know how important it is to defend even a tiny bit of your marketing budget, especially now, because as Rachel says, there's likely to be a much bigger payoff.
As media consumption is rising because people have more free time and they're engaging, essentially you're chasing more eyeballs at less cost, so you're getting a cheaper cost per view. It's a great opportunity to buy media, increase share of voice, particularly when your competition aren't. So I think it would be think about where are your consumers, what are your competitors doing, what does the media marketplace or landscape look like? And therefore, it's a really good time to rethink that mix.
Can you talk us through this 60-40 rule and how it can help businesses with their marketing strategies?
Yeah, so the 60-40 rule is a way of trying to understand the intent behind your marketing. You can think about it as sales for today versus sales for tomorrow. And when we think about that rule, it's not so much about which media channels sit within the 60 or the 40. It's more around thinking, okay, well, what am I trying to get my consumers to do? We've always thought television being the big brand builder for the 60 and digital playing a much bigger role in kind of the 40. But actually a lot of recent work has shown that to brand build and build memory structures, it's more around moving pictures and sound. So any video, whether it's online or more traditional TV, falls into the brand building space. So by thinking about it as, well, how do I build sales for today and tomorrow? It really gives you a path to building longer term brand growth.
So digital needs to be an important part of your mix and not something you think about separately. Still not sold? Well, it's time for the lightning round. where Rach Powell busts some of the most commonly held myths. Ready? Here we go. YouTube isn't needed in the marketing mix to drive incremental reach because TV and broadcast video on demand can fill the gap.
The TV networks have done a really interesting job in terms of the VOD services, and they continue to evolve. But at the moment, the reach just isn't there. Whereas for YouTube, amongst Aussie's 18 plus, the reach is currently higher than any TV station or video subscription platform, so even bigger than Netflix. So I think we need to be realistic about today, how much reach can we get from the different channels and where are our consumers' eyeballs?
Okay, tick on that one. Next. TV is the most effective channel for long-term brand building.
It's actually really not a channel argument or discussion. It's a format one. So in terms of long-term brand building and sales, it's moving pictures and sound. So any video content that is going to build those memory structures and drive long-term brand building.
Final one, search is separate from marketing and doesn't have a place in the media plan or advertising budget.
Search has for many companies sat off on its own with a separate team. But we're increasingly seeing the need to drive media synergies and look at bringing different media plans together and breaking down some of those silos. And when you combine TV and search together, you get an incremental 25% in your return on investment. We did a study recently, globally, Google's biggest ever study into consumer behaviours. And it found that when people are researching for products, they're either evaluating or exploring. And search plays a really important role there. 84% of Aussies research before they go and buy something. The other really interesting thing about search, I think, is the role that it plays with other media. So if you think about the last time you're watching TV, you're probably sitting there with a remote in one hand and a smartphone in the other. And chances are if something interesting popped up, a brand or an advertising campaign, you Googled it.
Yeah.
And so we need to think about that.
Make the most of the fact that we can't even go to the toilet without taking our phones with us. You know you do it. So search has to be a part of the mix because if you've worked hard to make creative that's captured people's attention, they're likely to give you a little search. So how does all this knowledge about the mix work in practice? For that, we're bringing in Brent Smart, Chief Marketing Officer for IAG, a general insurance company with a house of brands including CGU, SGIO and NRMA insurance. And it turns out insurance works a little differently when it comes to purchase decisions.
Most people, they don't think about it every day. The only time you purchase your insurance is when you get a renewal. For most Australians, about 75%, that is a bill that they just pay. So only about 25% of people think about insurance when they get that renewal. They might shop, they might search, they might compare, whatever. But most don't. Most are on autopilot. They just pay it and out of sight, out of mind. Until, of course, you claim, you know, your house burns down, you have a car accident, whatever. Then suddenly insurance is really important. But the thing is, that's a very small percentage of customers each year, less than 10%. So the challenge for us is if you spend your time talking about the product, there's a small percentage of people who care. So for all those other people on autopilot, you actually have to find a different way to connect with them. And it's really about building the brand in the long term so that you start building what we call mental availability. So how do you make more people mentally available to your brand when they're ready to shop? That might be in a month, it might be in 3 years, we don't know, but we try and build those sort of memory structures and emotional connection to our brand so that when they do come to shop, they're more likely to pick us.
There's that long-term brand building stuff again, but Brent understands why it's still a hard sell for some businesses.
In the current business climate, I think we're all under pressure to deliver quarterly results, and therefore everyone's looking for that short-term, quick, result. That's the pressure every single marketer is under. I think what you've got to do is take the time to really understand your category and understand how it works, and then really think about, okay, well, so what does that mean from a marketing point of view?
Well, the other thing you've got to understand, obviously, is your audience. If you take NRMA as an example, who is your target audience there?
Everyone. No. Insurance tends to skew a bit older, mainly because the older you are, the more stuff you got to insure. But when we're doing the brand building, it's mass. We're kind of going after everyone, to be honest. But then we get a little bit more targeted with different product lines. Building a strong brand creates such an awesome competitive advantage for businesses. It means you can charge more. It means that you can ride out some of these challenges we're facing right now better than other brands because people trust you more. People give you the benefit of the doubt. They stick with you. And that is amazingly powerful.
But that doesn't mean you stop advertising. NRMA launched a new campaign in August, taking us back to last summer when communities across Australia were devastated by bushfires. After everything that's happened since, it's hard to believe that was less than a year ago. But with summer coming and so many people focused on the global pandemic, Brent and his team saw an opportunity to remind people of where we were at the start of 2020.
Looks like the wind's changed again. There's going to be a front.
That's part of NRMA's new campaign, First Saturday, featuring real RFS volunteers heading into a raging fire. A very different message to what we're used to seeing when everyone is so focused on coronavirus.
So it's a very different campaign for us and for the category. Before COVID, we had the unprecedented bushfires, right? I mean, unbelievable. And certainly for our business, it was massive. We're spending about $1.5 billion rebuilding this state right now, and it's really important to us. But we also want to play a really active role in doing everything we can to help prepare people for the summer that's coming. And so we didn't want to just react when bad things happen as an insurer and fix them. We wanted to try and be proactive and really help people be more prepared, do anything they can to be safer and kind of avoid some of these things happening.
But that means you're trying to change people's behaviour, something that's not easy, but something that NRMA are trying to encourage with their First Saturday campaign.
So can we get people on the first Saturday of every month to complete a really simple task around their house that makes their house safer and more prepared for different climate events, bushfires, storms, what have you. And we think that by creating that regular sort of ritualised behaviour on the first Saturday of every month, we've got a shot at people actually remembering it and doing it. So we really wanted to find a bigger emotional hook for people. And working with our agency, this idea surfaced, which was about if we all do our bit and make our home safer, then maybe we actually can help first responders and maybe they don't have to, do as much as they did last summer.
And Lord knows they did a lot. But when you're trying to make people take action, you can't just tell them to do something. You have to make them feel, to take them back to where they were not that long ago and make them realise it's important to do whatever they can to stop that from happening again. To really capture that emotion, Brent thinks you need one thing.
I think emotional storytelling, you definitely need video. We tend to think about a screen strategy, so we don't think about television and digital. We just think about screens. Like what's a overall screen strategy that gets us in front of the right sort of people and the right sort of reach. But the other great thing about First Saturday, it gives us an event to also plan our media around. So whilst we can do the emotional brand building and sort of priming of the audience 3 weeks out, on the actual week of First Saturday, it's more call to action type communication saying, here's what you need to do this Saturday, get involved. And that tends to be a bit more rational, shorter durations. Like we might do that in 15 seconds, whereas we might do more the emotional storytelling in longer formats like 60s and things. So it's really about thinking about, okay, what's the message we're trying to get across? And therefore, what are the right channels and what are the right durations? And how do we, change that based on what we're trying to do?
How important has online been with your current campaign?
It's always a big part of our mix. We don't think about just TV, digital. We just think about like screens where we can tell emotional stories. I mean, search is massive for us as well. I said earlier, only 25% of our customers are sort of shopping and the other 75% aren't. And the best signal I get if someone's shopping is they search car insurance or home insurance. I mean, it's like a killer app for us when it comes to the short-term sales activity. So we're all over all the digital channels for sure.
And so you should be. And to bring home what we've been talking about when it comes to the mix, I'm checking in with Mark Lolbach, CEO of Group M Australia, a media investment company. Mark's had some experience getting the mix right after working globally with Unilever, PepsiCo and McDonald's.
If you go back even 10 years, when it came to choosing, say, channel mix, you might have had 6 or 8 channels to choose from. You do TV and you do outdoor, and if you had the budget, you throw in a bit of radio. Print might get in there. But it was pretty standard. It was all about weights. How big was the budget? How far could it go? All the effort and energy on the creative went onto the television. Fast forward to today. There's unlimited numbers of channels. And not only that, I think where the world's moved to and why it's so exciting is there's 3 C's. There's channel planning, but out of that is then also context planning, and then out of that is creative planning. And if you look at that, that's the most exciting world you can live in when it comes to marketing. So it's not only just about choosing the channel, but then who's there, what time of day, what are they doing, what's the environment, and therefore what's all the context that I need to worry about. And where we can't get lazy is following that through to the best creative solution we can possibly deliver in that moment.
So getting the creative right is key, but you don't want to forget about the data.
We've never had more data available to us today. I think the critical thing we have to keep reminding ourselves, it's not how much data or the volume of data we have, it's actually what we do with it. How do we extract insights out of that data? How do we turn those insights into actions? And more importantly, through to results.
Because what's the point of looking at the data if you're not going to do something smart with it? We're not here to make spreadsheets. We're here to get results. But it's not all about your bottom line. Data can also be used to focus on your customers, something Mark says they're passionate about at Group M.
We want to be responsible for the next era of media where advertising works better.
Amen.
Because it should be a better experience,
Of course.
Because data can also be abused and can be a bit scary. Yeah, so we want to actually make it a better experience so that if you do receive an ad on a particular device or through a particular piece of outdoor, that it's relevant and not spooky.
How do you use data to determine the best media mix?
A lot of people would do marketing mix modelling. What we've tried to do at Group M and actually using very effectively is to take that a step further and use multi-touch attribution as well, and then combine them and actually be able to use all of those data points from both online and offline to create better reach curves and better investment strategies. Because we've got computers today that are so powerful, the amount of different data points from the client, whether it's their sales, whether it's their own databases, right through to point of sale investment, to what's going on, to store traffic, to whatever it might be, we can really today develop very, very sophisticated plans that will drive more effectiveness and a better return of investment. And the other thing that I'm really happy about, because it certainly wasn't when I was even 4 or 5 years ago on the client side, the speed that we can calculate ROI is now very, very fast. Where in the past, you'd run your campaign, and sort of 6 months later, they'd grind all the numbers and you get the answers and go, wow, I should have changed that part of the mix. Today, we're optimizing daily.
So you can make decisions quickly, but they shouldn't be bad decisions.
You can use data responsibly and use it to drive decisions of what is the marketing objective, and then with all the data we can do and all the modelling, what's the most effective way we can divide up that budget so that when it works together. Because I think that's the other thing we shouldn't forget about channel planning. There's very small number of clients that can get away in operating in a channel. I think all of the data and all the research shows it's almost like an orchestra. It's the combination of the different messages across the different channels that really creates the magic.
And as the orchestra is warming up behind the curtain, a good conductor will know where their audience is. And after this year, it's probably at home watching the performance via live streaming, something Mark has noticed.
So we're seeing a massive shift of audiences to online video. I don't think anybody can survive more than probably about 10 seconds these days without searching for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guilty.
Yeah. And I think this part of it is because, one, it's so powerful today. It's so fast and it's so powerful. And secondly, it's so much fun. It doesn't matter whether it's a how-to video, whether you want to use audio and use a Google Home or one of the devices that can answer. I know in our house alone, I think we have 5. Every bedroom has one. The kitchen has one. And it's fun. You're sitting down eating and somebody will ask a question about, who did that? And we go, I don't know. Hey, Google, who did that? So search has never been more exciting and just part of our daily life as well. And that gives us great environment to get that context right, to serve up messages and connect with audiences in that space as well.
In terms of language, do you think we need to move away from these terms online and offline?
Because of technology and the development of the industry, I think we should be much more focused on screens, much more on context. I mean, if you think about screens, from a phone to an iPad to the television to outdoor to bus stops to, even magazines. I mean, I don't know how many people read a hard magazine anymore. They're all subscription and it's super exciting. So I think we've got to be much more focused on what's the channel, what's the context, what's the right creative solution that we need. But, online, offline, we certainly don't have that conversation anymore. Everything we do has to be a combination of intelligence and imagination. We've actually just adopted those two words as almost our core purpose because we have to remember that this is about being data-minded and people-loving. Yeah, we've got to focus on being really analytical and really abstract at the same time. We should be really passionate about the science and the art at the same time. So to me, that balance of intelligent imagination, let's not get caught up in just the numbers, because still the most effective, successful campaigns that win, deliver amazing results, at the fundamental of all of them is still massive amounts of creativity. Let's not forget it is a craft. Yeah, and our job is to, as a whole industry, to remain really balanced between that intelligent side and the imagination side.
Get that combo right and then bring in the conductor to fire up the Media Mix Orchestra, and you, my friend, will not only get the best bang for your buck, you'll also get the best results. And if you're not getting results, you may as well be bleating into the wilderness. People have so much choice, so it's up to you to make something that captures their attention. But then you've got to show up where they're likely to be, and you will increase your chances of being seen, heard, searched, and hopefully purchased. And with that little free gem, it's time to bid you farewell as we round out season 1. If you've been with me from the start of this podcast, thank you for listening. And if you haven't, what have you been doing? Get back to the start. There's so much learning to do. All right, it's time to go. So long, farewell. Oh, God, I'm not going to put you through that. I'll just wrap it up, eh? You've been listening to Rethink, a podcast by Think with Google. I've been your host, Rachel Corbett, and if you've enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends, your family, your enemies. It would be an excellent olive branch. And don't forget to leave a little review. This podcast was brought to you by Think with Google. It was created by The Hallway and Eardrum in partnership with Google and produced by Eardrum. The executive producer was Ralph Van Dyke. The producer was Sarah Mashman. Project manager was Jesse Williams. The theme was Rethought by Tucker Perry. And the engineer was Adrian Walton. This podcast was recorded on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Until next time.